Welcome to a special edition of Out Front. Tonight, treason or cautious deliberation? That's the question tonight after President Trump accused his own Deputy Attorney General of planning illegal acts. Why? Well, because according to former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, he and Rod Rosenstein seriously discussed wearing a wire to record the president and also invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office.
A discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort. The Deputy Attorney General offered to wear a wire into the White House. He said, "I never get searched." Now, he was not joking. He was absolutely serious. And in fact, he brought it up in the next meeting we had.
To that, the president called McCabe disgraced and deranged, then accusing those two top officials of, quote, planning a very illegal act and got caught. This was the illegal and treasonous insurance policy in full action, says the president on Twitter this morning. So to be clear, McCabe and Rosenstein, they may disagree on what and how things were discussed, and they seem to disagree on quite a bit, but they definitely agree that they did not act on anything. Even so, the president today seems to be taking his cues from a conservative ally in Fox News, quoting him in a tweet with this. "This was an illegal coup attempt on the president of the United States," to which the president writes, "True." Laura Jarrett is out front live in Washington for us right now. So, Laura, Rosenstein's already on his way out the door in this kind of a sense of the word at the Justice Department. I mean, he's long been planning to leave after the new AG arrived. What does all of this mean for Rosenstein's exit?
Well, Kate, the Deputy Attorney General has been here before, somehow weathering the McCabe storm when it seemed like his days were frankly numbered. And as we've reported, Rosenstein wants to help with the transition for his successor at the Justice Department. But the president's displeasure was clearly on full display today. And we know that Attorney General Bill Barr has picked Jeffrey Rosen, the Transportation Department Deputy Secretary, to likely serve as his deputy, his number 2 at DOJ. Also, no word tonight from Rosenstein on McCabe's interview and all of those explosive comments, but the Justice Department statements on his behalf so far have consistently tried to focus on what Rosenstein actually did or didn't do, as opposed to what might have been discussed. As you mentioned, one source in the room telling me when Rosenstein was wearing the wire, that idea of all of that came up. He told me it was just viewed as sarcasm, but McCabe adamant on 60 Minutes that it was no laughing matter at all. And meanwhile, Capitol Hill has taken notice, with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, suggesting over the weekend he will subpoena McCabe and Rosenstein to testify if necessary.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in just a moment. Great to see you, Laura. Thanks so much. Out front with me now, former Nixon White House counsel John Dean, former Assistant Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama, Juliette Kayyem, and former Chief of the Organized Crime Section at the Department of Justice, James Trusty. He's also a longtime friend of the aforementioned Rod Rosenstein. Guys, thanks for coming in. John, President Trump is accusing both McCabe and Rosenstein essentially of treason. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but I don't think I'm going too far. This is from the President of the United States. I know we see a lot of tweets. I know the president says a lot of things. I know we are in a different time. But the President of the United States accusing these two top officials of treasonous acts, what do you do with that?
It's absolutely absurd. It shows the man, one, has no knowledge of what actually treason is, but secondly, he thinks like a monarch, that somehow these people have made a bad act against him is equivalent with a bad act against the country. And they don't equate that way. Treason is not defined as an attack on a president. This is no coup that these people were planning. This is a president who really doesn't have a good grip on reality at times.
Juliette, I mean, is talk of invoking the 25th Amendment or wearing a wire to record conversation with the president a serious thing? Absolutely, I'll answer it for you. But while they don't agree on how these conversations took place, both do agree that none of it went anywhere. Is there anything illegal about this?
No, and they'll disagree about the tone. There's certainly nothing illegal about the 25th Amendment. The Constitution envisions its own sort of out clause for the president. And I just want to put everyone back to where these two men were. So non-political men, McCabe and Rosenstein, and the madness around them. So by the time they're having this conversation, the president has rejected or ignored evidence that his first national security advisor, Mike Flynn, may be a Russian asset. He rejects calls to fire him. He's gotten rid of Sally Yates, the deputy attorney general who told him about Flynn. He's publicly mocking Jeff Sessions, his attorney general, for recusing himself from the investigation. He's fired Comey. He's undermined his intelligence community's assessment of the Russian influence in the campaign. And, right, all along, he is undermining the investigation. So to me, the fact they're having this conversation is actually not that shocking. We're just forgetting what it was like in those months and what was and to have a president like that, with the scope and the depth of conversations and lies that he's having with the Russians. The 25th Amendment seems like the least of the conversations they should have been having.
I guess that is, and that is really saying something. James, you've known Rod Rosenstein for years. You saw this interview with Andrew McCabe. Let me play you what McCabe says about Rosenstein and wearing the wire. Listen to this.
He said, I never get searched when I go into the White House. I could easily wear a recording device. They wouldn't know it was there. Now, he was not joking. He was absolutely serious. And in fact, he brought it up in the next meeting we had. I never actually considered taking him up on the offer.
He says Rosenstein brought it up not once, but twice. Rosenstein, through the Justice Department, they deny it by saying the Deputy Attorney General never authorized any recording that Mr. McCabe references. Can they both be right?
I think it's pretty unlikely. I mean, I don't want to try to psychoanalyze McCabe, but I don't think we should gloss over how fundamental the differences are between what Rod has said or what DOJ has said and what McCabe has said. And that means you have to start assessing credibility instead of jumping ahead and assuming, like apparently even the president does, that there was a coup in motion. This is a situation where Rod Rosenstein says it didn't happen. At best, maybe there was sarcasm. I don't think McCabe is so sluggish to the idea of sarcasm that he couldn't guess it. But he's got some serious credibility problems. He's been found to have lied by the Inspector General multiple times. He's hawking a kiss and tell book as a disgraced former official, and he's flailing around partly at Trump but partly at others to bring people down.
But the way DOJ writes about it, though, it's about that he didn't authorize any actions. Do you dismiss that they had real conversations if he brought it up twice? At least that's what McCabe says.
There's earlier statements that came out that said that at best there was something that was said sarcastically. And,
right.
And again, part of this, you can maybe disqualify me on some level, but part of this is knowing Rod Rosenstein. He is not so foolish as to think that the 25th Amendment was in play. He's also not so crazy to think that he's going to go wear a wire into the White House. These just do not ring true to anybody that knows Rod as a constitutional scholar, as a serious prosecutor, a career prosecutor for many years. It rings like somebody who's selling a book, worried about criminal charges, and who has a checkered history.
Not dismissing you at all, but which your perspective makes this all the more interesting and fascinating, quite frankly. I mean, John, let me play you something else that McCabe said in this interview. That when considering whether or not to appoint the special counsel, Rosenstein wanted to get advice from Jim Comey about it. Listen.
He raised the issue with me twice, and ultimately I told him that I wasn't comfortable connecting him with Jim Comey, that I didn't think Jim should weigh in on these things.
Why not?
Because at that point, Jim was no longer a member of the government, and it would have been improper to have him weighing in on these decisions.
Now, the Justice Department, again, in the statement on this one, they said that Rosenstein never spoke to Mr. Comey about appointing a special counsel. Now, that doesn't seem to be really the question from what you hear from McCabe, because he says they obviously weren't put in touch. Why, from your perspective, John, why would Rosenstein want Comey's advice after all that had gone down?
Well, I don't know. We don't know what was actually said. It's all hearsay we're getting, trying to piece this back together. I can only imagine that here's a man who has never been at the level of Deputy Attorney General, has never appointed a special counsel before, and if he did, in fact, want to talk to Comey, he's got a more seasoned partner to sort of bounce it around with. McCabe was right, though, and obviously Rosenstein didn't do it, and that was wise not to, because it would have only made it look more collusive, the whole undertaking of appointing a special counsel.
Looking forward, this is all getting a lot of attention, not only in the public, but also on Capitol Hill. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, he is making it quite clear that he is not done with this when it comes to the 25th Amendment and the whole concept of wearing a wire. Let me play you what he said yesterday.
The whole point of Congress existing is to provide oversight of the executive branch. So I promise your viewers the following, that we will have a hearing about who's telling the truth, what actually happened.
Will you subpoena McCabe and Rosenstein to appear?
How can I not, if that's what it takes?
Graham seems to think that McCabe and Rosenstein could be in real trouble here, Julia. Do you think they could be?
You know, I don't know. I will say that Graham and the president spend a lot of time attacking critics of the president and never discussing that the investigation will actually exonerate the president. So if I were McCabe or Rosenstein, I would say bring it on.